Kibsi helps customers solve unique business process problems. So within your operation, in your factory, in your warehouse, you have all these business processes that were probably developed over a decade or decades, and they're part of how you build your widget or how you operate your distribution center. And they're not the same as the next customer, right? Every customer has kind of grown into its unique set of processes. The power of Kibsi is that we can integrate into that kind of core business process and figure out what part of that business process needs measuring or alerting or counting or just quantification. And so to do that with your custom business process is what makes us really different than other approaches at computer vision that might be more rigid in what they can do. When we first envisioned Kibsi, we thought of it as a kind of horizontal platform, a tool for developers to build on. And I think that there's still that opportunity as this industry grows, as kind of acceptance of this technology grows. But in the short term, we also discovered that it was much more impactful to customers if we could do a more kind of vertical solution that was a little more purpose-built around at least a business domain, like a warehouse or a factory. And so what we've done now is really focused in on warehouses and factories as the location that's the target of Kibsi use cases. And that lets us kind of concentrate our efforts around the kinds of things you want to detect, the kinds of things you want to do in those environments. And then lets us also go a little bit further than just being a platform, but lets us deliver kind of a complete outcome for customers. And that's not what we anticipated when we started, and it's kind of where we've landed through organic feedback from customers and winning and losing in the market. As we've met with customers, we've met with some of the largest customers in the world, and we've talked to them about, hey, where is there a problem in a business process that you want to monitor? And the fact that customers know right off the top of their head, hey, here is something we do every day, and here are the failure modes that process has, and here's what that costs us in efficiency or quality or effectiveness. And so to me, being able to engage with customers that have incredibly sophisticated operations that probably have already tried every automation possible, yet they still have parts of their business problem they can't measure and manage, again, because the tools to do that visually have not existed till now. Kibsi impacts our customers in a few different ways, right? So first of all, if we can keep people safe. So we've heard of stories where in a particular operation, there are dangerous machinery around. And when that machinery is moving, you can't get your fingers near it, otherwise you risk losing a finger. And so helping customers prevent that kind of injury is really interesting and really meaningful. The second category is producing quality products. So if you're producing a product that maybe has a defect that doesn't get detected until the consumer takes your product home, that's a really big problem. It's a warranty problem, it's a perception, image problem, and if you rely on repeat sales, it's probably a really big bottom line problem as well. So that's another category of impact. And then the final category of impact are these paper cuts. So there are problems in every operation that cause small outages, like your assembly line stops for 5 minutes, or you have to unload part of a truck because you got something wrong. These little paper cut problems in many large companies add up to a really substantial ROI, but it's not usually worth like reworking a whole assembly line or installing new automation or new machinery for it. It's like just annoying enough that there's real ROI there, but we're not gonna take 6 months of outage and rebuild an assembly line to fix it. And that's where just augmenting the process with cameras and letting those cameras start to measure and manage the process and give you more data can be done in hours, days, and it's not this massive undertaking. And so I think what that does is it opens up a lot more problems. It kind of brings them into the realm of fixable or monitorable or manageable, maybe that weren't before with traditional industrial automation solutions. The most surprising application of Kibsi technology has definitely been for animal welfare. We didn't build Kibsi with zoos in mind, but it turns out that there's a great opportunity to monitor what's happening inside of an exhibit, what's happening inside of an enclosure. Are the animals utilizing the different elements of the enclosure? So if it's maybe got some water in it, are the animals going into the water, and how much time do they spend on the water versus on land? Are they showing anticipatory behaviors that we don't want in captive animals? We want them to be more natural. Never would have thought that we'd spend time looking at footage of animals, but it's definitely been the most unexpected use case. As AI gets adopted in the enterprise, we should think about this. On one extreme is the kind of raw AI, right? Like the research stuff. That's not useful to anybody by itself. So then the whole question becomes, what does AI applied look like? Like, how do I take the research? How do I take the hardcore, amazing research that's coming out of all this generative AI work, and how do I make that into something I can apply to my business? And so that comes in a few different layers. And I think about this as, on one extreme, simple productivity tools, like ChatGPT is fundamentally a productivity tool. It helps an individual worker, a knowledge worker, write something faster or generate an image. Like it's not really doing any probably better thinking than your employee could do, but it's making them more productive. It's getting the work done more quickly. The other end of the scale is what I like to call like the $100 million problem in your business. You've got some manufacturing process that you could automate all the people out of and have robots replace the whole workforce, right? That is 5 years of custom work. It's very specialized hardware and software, and it is your core business. So that's the other category, and that work's gonna get done by big industrial automation vendors or by a lot of custom professional services, or likely by a blend of those things. And they're massive R&D projects, and you're only gonna do them if you can save tens to hundreds of millions of dollars. The interesting spot that no one's playing in, and this is where kind of the motivation for Kibsi comes from, is what about everything in between those things that are more interesting than like a productivity tool for a worker, but they're not a $100 million problem that you're going to invest $40 million to go. In fact, I think the largest set of problems live in that middle ground of these problems that are, I said earlier, paper cuts or they cause productivity challenges, but on the scale of millions of dollars a year, not hundreds of millions of dollars a year. I think at that scale, we're not going to take on speculative R&D projects. We're not going to go and try a 5-year journey that has only a 70% chance of working. But if we could find tools that let us rapidly solve those problems, you're going to find that there's a huge number of use cases that can benefit from that middle ground. And so I really like this middle ground of bigger than an individual worker, but smaller than redoing your whole factory. And I think that's an interesting space for applied AI. We'll hopefully see like Gen AI approaches and LLM approaches and foundational models applied to things like computer vision, where maybe I can type in the thing I want to detect in my environment, and now I can go quantify and measure that. So that's where we think about like the future of Kibsi as well, is right now you drag and drop and design your Kibsi business logic in our low-code environment, but there's a future state where you just type in a box, count the number of times a person picks up the screwdriver, and right, and then it just starts happening. So I think we're still kind of getting to that point, but I think that's the future. I'm a father of two, both girls, 4 and 8, and I definitely want to impart upon them engineering skills, right? Like how do I get them curious about coding or robots or space or something like that? I think the key that I've found is to pick up on their whatever thread they start to pull on a little bit. That's interesting. That you can tie back into some STEM topics. My older daughter loves to build Legos, to build things. I think robotics is a good way to get into coding then. Let's build a robot, let's program the robot. I also think we shouldn't discount the value of something as simple as like video games or like just an iPad. I know there's this big push among parents to like limit screen time, and I agree that there's a limit, but my 4-year-old can navigate an iPhone or an iPad in a way that most adults can't, right? And so I think getting them the foundational tech skills really early on, getting them comfortable with technology, getting them to think about how technology might work and affect their lives, and then figuring out whether it's going to be math or space or engineering or what's the thing going to be that they're interested in, and then finding a way to work that into like fun time, right? You got to make it into a fun, interesting activity. So what I don't think will work is to tell my daughters, you will learn to code, here's your coding homework. I think it's be much more effective to figure out where they're showing interest and then make it into like a father-daughter activity. Let's build this together, let's do this together, let's do little baby steps and see it work. Women in technology, like it's a topic in the consciousness of the world right now. We talk a lot about how we can like hire more women or promote more women in the engineering parts of our business especially. The real problem there starts at a much younger age. And so look, we should do everything we can to help the women of the current workforce. But if we want more women in STEM roles, it starts like in 1st, 2nd grade. It starts with encouraging them to play with that stuff, not make it a boys versus like, the girls are playing with dolls and the boys are playing with robots. Why don't the girls play with robots too? The number one thing that, adult generation can do for tomorrow's is seed the ideas, the STEM ideas at a much earlier age. That's where the interest is created. And by the time they're getting to college, by the time they finish high school, like they're either interested in that or they're not. And I think it's probably too late most of the time to change it at that point. So the strength of tech founders is that they probably deeply understand the space that they're operating in, right? So they know how the tech they're building is going to interact with whatever problem it's solving because they've likely come from that background along the way. The weakness of tech founders that sales founders can do better at is tech founders probably don't spend enough time engaging with customers. They probably don't spend enough time selling. I think most tech founders have a customer orientation. They like customers, they want to service customers, they want to win, but not the same thirst for winning that next customer or for engaging with that next customer that a sales background founder would have. On the flip side, a sales background founder might not be able to pivot the customer conversation to something that's achievable, something that the startup can actually go build and do and service and deliver. And so somewhere in the middle is enough tech skills to steer the conversation with the customer, enough tech skills to help the customer think about the possibilities and be imaginative together, but then enough of the sales capability, enough of the sales orientation to like pick up the phone day after day and try to get that next opportunity or try to follow through to the end. I think tech founders often are too passive in their engagement with customers. I don't know that it matters what the founding team looks like as much as what is the kind of first 5 employees look like. I think it's relatively straightforward for an inspirational founder to surround themselves, whether with other founders or early employees. I think it would be lonely to be a single founder. Every startup, has really happy days where they bring in that first dollar, where they bring whether it's investment dollars or customer dollars, and then they have days where they're not sure how they're going to survive to the next fundraise, right? And so I do think maybe from that angle, it's interesting to have people around you. Other than that, you have to just recognize where your weakness is. So if you're a really good technologist, but you can't talk to customers, then you got to surround yourself with whether it's founders or employees that can do that, and vice versa. If you're a really good sales background founder that can help customers connect with you personally, but then you can't back that up with like the technical skills to get through the rest of the conversation, then you better have a really strong technical person right by you. Oftentimes it does mean they need to be co-founders, because if you're going to have someone take that kind of risk with you on day zero, that's probably the price of admission.